Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Eddie, my man, what's up?
How's it going? How's everything?
Oh, I'm loving it, man. Ohio's got some nice weather going on, not too hot. It almost feels like beginning of October here.
You know, we've had so much rain in the last 2 days in northern Jersey. It's been crazy, like torrential downpours.
Oh, you're making me jealous, man. All it's been is hot here. So tonight's finally been, like I said, it feels like October right now. It's kind of nice. I'm actually sitting in my breezeway with the windows open, a nice cup of coffee, and ready for some good conversation, man. What's new? What's on the mind tonight?
What's new is very interesting. Today I got yesterday I got the copy of my brand new B9 robot from Lost in Space. There's a company that's making them, and I got one that's called the Retro Robot. And what they did is they gave a coloration of it where it's blue and red. I bought it because, growing up, the Lost in Space robot was definitely my favorite. And they're putting out a second edition. Actually, they did put it out a few months ago. I just didn't know about it, which is crazy. And the second one is called the Antimatter Robot, which is there was an episode called the Antimatter Man, and they base it on that. Now, that robot itself cost me a little bit over $110, which I was surprised because, the robot itself is the same thing as the other one that cost me $49, but it's just the color thing they did to it, the scheme that makes it a higher collectible. Now, I don't know if you remember back in 1997, Threadmasters made a robot of Lost in Space. It was, I think, done a little better than this one, but this one has like 10 phrases. I actually uploaded on the YouTube channel a part there where I just play around with the robot and show all the phrases, just to show people what it does now. Joe, you know what I was thinking? That this is an interesting conversation we could even have today. It's the reason I had this love for robot is in the early 1970s, Lost in Space was on every day around 4 p.m., 5 p.m. It played on TV. And I always used to watch it. And, I was so excited for the fact that I was a young kid, and what kid didn't want to have their own robot and laser pistol,
Oh, absolutely.
So at the time, we had a lot, like you said, at the time we had a lot of people who were into space and robots and UFOs and stuff. And you could see that in a lot of the Johnson Smith catalogs of the time had, for example, there was, I think Aurora made it, if I'm correct. I could be wrong if it was Aurora who made it, but there was a kit that consisted of the tricorder, the phaser gun, and the communicator from Star Trek. And you would always see that in the Johnson Smith catalog. Not in the catalog itself, but when you saw ads in comic books, it would always be like in the center page at the top. And I ordered it, I put it together and stuff. And the phaser pistol was always like super cool. I always wanted the Lost in Space pistol because somehow I liked, Lost in Space more than I did Star Trek. Ironically, as I grew up and, became and got married, there was a season that I watched every single Star Trek on a daily basis for like a whole year and a half.
Nice.
And became, because growing up as a kid, who wants to see Star Trek? Star Trek is more for the mature audience.
That was some pretty almost, they did have their fun stuff, but that was more of like a harder science fiction, whereas, Lost in Space was more, kind of geared for kids and younger adults and more just kind of like, laid back, good time type of show.
Yeah, it was geared, but you know what? It wasn't a bad show. It was an awesome show, and I really think that. Here's the thing that's funny. When you look at, and we always talk about collectibles, and this podcast is even based on the mail order of the 1970s, comic book mail order and stuff. Back in the 70s, I think that with the shows on television such as Lost in Space, then you had Buck Rogers in the 21st century, which I fell in love with the girl that played in the show there. I forget her name now, which is interesting. But anyway, I got to meet her, and I was very excited about meeting. I think it was Moran. Her last name was something like Moran or something like that. And the show itself, along with, Space 1999, which actually came on much later, though, but there was a big lure towards UFOs and UFO sightings and all the stuff things. And I think this took a lot of companies saw this kind of resurgence of the UFO thing, like back in the 40s when the UFO craze went crazy, or not 40s, late 50s and 60s. The same thing was started to happen in the 70s. In the 70s, people were going back to the original Aurora monsters, and the UFO thing was big. And let me tell you, I used to love when I was talking about UFOs and how to build a flying saucer, and I even purchased a book one time that it was entitled "How to Build a Flying Saucer When Everybody Else Failed." A very hard out of print book that I got it as an adult, but it was available, in the early 80s, I guess, early 70s or late 70s. Joe, what is your feeling with all these UFOs? And the reason I'm about to ask you this is because I recently read in Popular Mechanics. I haven't really looked much into it, to be honest with you, because it just happened a few weeks ago. And it's really brand new news. The government finally came out and said, and this is the funny thing, before it was called UFOs, they have a new term for it. It's like UAPs, which is a unidentified aerial phenomenon, something like that. And they came and they said that they actually have a group of people. There is a segment in the government that's actually, studying unidentified flying objects. Now, it kind of shocked me because I think there was a statement that someone said too that the United States actually has vehicles of unknown origins, of not of earthly origin, like they say, which I guess that could be a way that they want to stick it in there to create more conspiracy theories and stuff. But I don't know. What is your take on this, Joe? You want to tell me a little?
Yeah, and I know that they've changed it from UFO to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, and it seems that the reason why they changed it is to kind of get around people making freedom of information requests, because a lot of people, when they were making their requests, were asking about UFOs and UFOs. So the FOIA were coming back to them saying there's nothing that we have on UFOs, because in actuality the government changed it to UAP. So when people caught that on, which I believe it was Hillary Clinton who made the term public, UAP, so more people through FOIA started asking for sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena. But my whole take on this goes back to the 90s, when I was kind of like when I was in high school and right when I graduated. I wasn't really big into UFOs or anything like that. I kind of kept an open mind. I remember having this two cassette set. It was a VHS cassettes, and it was on UFOs and all that, and it talked about these cases, and it was interesting, whatever. And I kind of really put it on the back burner. I didn't really care too much about it. Now, fast forward into about the mid 2000s, I believe it was about 2000, would be 12 or so. No, actually earlier. I'm sorry, about 2010. I had my first, I guess you could call it a UFO sighting. I seen some objects in the sky while I was actually at work in the afternoon, and they were moving like nothing I've ever seen before. Now, I spent 9 years in the military, and I was around a lot of different airplanes and helicopters, and I've never seen anything in the sky move like this. And I don't know to this day, I don't know of anything that could move the way I seen these objects moving. So again, I thought it was a pretty cool sighting, nothing, big. I still watch some of the shows that were on, History Channel or these other channels, maybe read some articles here or there. But what really kind of changed my mind was about 2000, I believe it was 15. I was actually coming back from a friend's house. We were just playing our weekly game of Dungeons and Dragons, and it was during the evening. The sun was kind of, setting a little bit. It was still bright out, and I was driving home on the interstate, and over a bypass, there was a hotel area, and I actually seen two low. They almost looked like they were hovering or either traveling very slowly, black triangles. And they had to have been only maybe 500-600 feet high. And I could see, they were just all black. They were, by each angle, they had looked like a dark orange light. And I actually almost wrecked my truck trying to turn around to go back and try to get a video of them. So when I turned around, I was, they were gone. And this was maybe within 10 seconds. They were just completely gone. And from where I had parked my car, you could see the open sky for just miles and miles, and they were nowhere around. So I thought, man, that's really interesting. I'm not saying these are from another world or something. They could possibly be military aircraft or something else, because they kind of, resemble the stealth aircraft, the B-52 stealth, on the way the black outer shell was, because I had seen, the stealth bombers up close when I was in the military. So when I went home, I was looking online for, what could these black triangles be, and I was doing some investigative work on the internet. So I had come across MUFON. So I put the case into MUFON. I put my previous case, I sent it into MUFON, and a field investigator contacted me, about both of my cases. So I talked to her for a while. Real nice lady. Ended up being friends with her, and I was telling her a little bit about myself, how I'm in law enforcement and everything as my day job. And she said, you should give MUFON a shot, since you have some investigative experience. She said, it might be right up your alley. She goes, and you seem like you could have a good objective view of, what people see and what you see. So I said, yeah, not a problem. I'll look into it. And, I was able to get my certification to become a MUFON field investigator. So over my 3 years of being in MUFON investigating reports, I have over 100 different sightings. Now, during my course of my 3 years in MUFON, I was actually at work with two other guys, both former military guys like myself. We seen some unidentified objects in the sky one night when we were just we were clearing up a call, and we were kind of standing outside talking. Had been about maybe 10 o'clock at night, and we seen these dark green objects flying over the sky in kind of like a formation. It was something that we have never seen before. And so over the years, just investigating all these reports and doing my research, I've tried to really keep an open mind on everything. You know what I mean? And I've come to the conclusion that there has to be something else going on than what's happening on this planet. I do believe a lot of these sightings are of military crafts, but I believe there's a small percentage that can't be explained and that might not be of this world, or might be on this planet that we don't know about. Maybe, you hear stuff about breakaway civilizations, underground races, living under Antarctica or under mountains or whatnot. There's all these different theories, so I always keep an open mind, but, it really caused me to believe that, yeah, there's something out there. So getting back to what's going on today, it's now the government's coming out, and saying, yeah, we don't know what this stuff is. There's reports in mainstream newspapers saying, there's stuff that, the government has stuff that is not made on this earth. I mean, come on, man, that's disclosure right there. They're telling you that they have stuff that's not made here. Okay, so if it's not made here, it's got to be made elsewhere, in a different planet. It can't just be made nowhere. It has to be made, somewhere else at some factory or warehouse on some different planet.
Well,
so I think it's really becoming interesting. And, for years they've called us UFO, conspiracy theorists and tinfoil hat people. So, now it's all coming to the tides are turning, man. It's becoming mainstream and more people are starting to accept it.
There was a famous guy, his name was Art Bell. And Art Bell, I forgot where, I know he was all the way in the West. I don't know if it was Nevada or what, but he built about 4 or 5 radio stations over time. And what he did, he started a show called Coast to Coast, which is still heard today by millions of people. I think it comes out on Wednesday nights or something like 2 or 3 in the morning. But the interesting part about Coast to Coast is that, and the reason I bring it up is because any mainstream UFO believer is going to probably be a member of Coast to Coast or listen to the radio show. Now, there is my partner David. David is a partner with me in the Acme House novelty section that I started, to bring back some of the novelties of the 70s. And again, when I was telling you how much the outer space theme influenced people back in the day, where most of the mail order stuff in the 70s had something to do with space. Like I said, kids wanted to build their own robot. They wanted their own spaceship, and everybody wanted to have a laser gun. I mean, I did.
Right.
I'm just saying the majority. But I think what gives a lot of credence and I mentioned David now in this, to the UFO stuff like today that gives it extra power over the past is the sources that have come out. Now, Edgar D. Mitchell was the 6th man that walked the moon. And he was very good friends, lifelong friends with William Rauscher. William Rauscher is a person very close to David Harversat. And Rauscher wrote a book entitled Edgar D. Mitchell, The Man with the Cosmic Mind. And that book, believe it or not, was published a few months ago. I think it was like November of 2019 it came out. And there was an interview in Coast to Coast in mid-March, give or take, with Mr. Rauscher, where he explained that Edgar D. Mitchell mentioned something about UFOs. So things like that. Now, I have the book. I don't really know what the content is. I haven't read it yet. I don't know exactly what Edgar Mitchell said about UFOs, or I did read a little bit into it, but I think that something shows that he kind of did go in the way of believing in them. Now, my take as a personal, as I am, I kind of like look at it more like it's either, there could be a lot of phenomena out there. I'm not saying that there's not, but there's a lot of sightings that probably there's an answer for, such as, it could be the Mars, it could be Venus, and people will also create hoaxes. And
right.
What has happened with that is, here's the way I look at it, Joe. If we look at the closest star system to the Earth that might be able to be like our, not that is closely, not really like our sun, but it's kind of in the same category as our sun, is Alpha Centauri. Now, Alpha Centauri is made up of a 3-star system. So supposing there was life in Alpha, let's say there's a planet around one of the stars, okay? And it has life in it. It's a minimum of 3.5 years going at the speed of light to get there. So I find the UFO idea and craze to be probably more earthly like, maybe something from Russia, the United States having secret. And let's be honest, the United States did use the cover of UFO lore to keep the public away from when they used to do experiments in Area 51. Where they would
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So you bring up a real interesting point there. Now you're talking about the speed of light. That's just what we know. There could be, you hear of all this different stuff such as anti-gravity and wormholes. I mean, yeah, with the speed of light, you're moving at a snail space when you're looking at the distances in outer space. But, if you have these advanced civilizations that are millions of years ahead of us, I mean, they could be playing with energy that, we can't even fathom right now. I mean, if you look at our cell phones and you just go back to say you were able to travel back into time 100 years and you were to give somebody our cell phone, they would be like, they would be amazed. You'd probably be called a magician. And, if you're in the wrong part of the country, you might be hung as a witch or something, with this technology. And you just look at how much we've advanced. I was just thinking back the other day, back in the early 2000s when I had one of those, Nokia phones, and I can remember playing Snake on it, on how it looked like an old computer from the 80s and all that. And then I look at my phone today and, just in that 15, 16, 18 years or so, how much our technology has advanced. So if you look at that and then you go a million years, into the future, what's our technology going to, be like then? What type of energy are we going to have then to use? Would using wormholes be as easy as, taking the bus, to downtown or something like that? So it's really interesting to think about.
It's what it is. Even with black holes, it was always a theory, and then finally I think they proved the theory of what Einstein was saying about the existence of black holes. Just like when they say there's another thing in the theory of Einstein relativity, where, for example, the blackness around the planet, right, like the Earth as it spins, it kind of, and I would say the best way to describe this is when you see they try to show, let's say, an LCD television compared to a plasma. Well, they say if you look up close in a microscope, when you throw a football across, you have this black kind of pixels following the football, or a blanket effect. So it's kind of like where space twists as the planet turns, the blackness of space kind of does go a little bit slower than the speed of the planet. And
right.
That is true. That was something that was proven by, in fact, my scientific knowledge right now is not coming out the way it should be in the explaining of that, which I'm not making it, I guess, that understandable. But anybody that knows a little bit would understand what I'm saying. So,
well, people could always look it up online.
Of course, they can always look it up and they can see what I'm talking about. But you know something, though? Now, I'm a guy who, again, I grew up loving flying saucers, and I probably have, no kidding when I say this, over 117 books, from Roswell to The Man in Black, because I've been a fanatic of it. Have I read all the books? Absolutely not. I bought them because I love the lore of the genre.
You're like me, man. I probably got 60, 70 books on UFOs and cryptids, and I've maybe read about half of them. I plan on reading as many as I can, but I see a new one out and I want to buy it. I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it, and I put it on my stack, and hopefully I'll get to that.
I find myself. I became a member of this thing called Curiosity Stream, I think it's called, where you pay so much a year and you're able to see like the History Vault, every possible, documentary out there. And I find myself watching documentaries about space all the time. I'm so fascinated.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, one thing that I looked up to more than anything else was when we passed by Pluto to see what Pluto looked like. In fact, I'm still angry that they demoted Pluto to not a planet, which I think was ridiculous, which I still think is ridiculous. And I think there is talk about reinstating Pluto again. I did hear that a few months ago. But having said that, though, and seeing so much what it's there, I still have it. I have a hard time to really kind of believing for anything that's out there. For the fact that there is, I'm sure you're aware of this even more than I am. The computer group that search for extraterrestrial life on their computers, SETI, is it called SETI?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I actually became a member of SETI back when it first came out. So I am one of those fanatics that don't believe 100%, but I still love it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what I don't, I kind of take it, the same way as you. I do believe, but there's a part of me that says, a lot of this stuff originated either on Earth or in our own solar system. I was looking at I have over 100 reports that I investigated for MUFON, and just giving these are just rough averages. I would say, 80% of those reports that I've got were natural, or they were identified, meaning, someone's was looking up in the sky and seeing the planet Venus in the morning and thought it was a UFO, or seen the full moon behind the cloud. I mean, there was a funny story, and very sweet lady I talked to, older lady, and she said, she was standing outside at her house and she seen this bright object, behind the clouds, and she knew it was a UFO and that it was communicating with her, and for days it was communicating with her. And I grabbed her information, her address, which way she was looking, looked through some programs, and she was looking at the full moon behind the the clouds, so you get there's a lot of reports like that. Everybody that sends in a report thinks they've seen a UFO. So I'm saying about 80% of it's natural, or it could be identified, a Chinese lantern or something. And then you get about 10% that's 10-15% that's kind of like insufficient data, where people send you bare bones information, or they don't want to talk, stuff like that. And then you get that 5 to 10% that's just, you don't know what it is. It is just strange. You know what I mean?
Joe, it's kind of like, let's just give you an example how a lot of that also works. There's the most famous magical trick ever done, I think, or not ever done, because I don't think it's ever been seen done, is called the Indian rope trick. Now, what the rope trick's supposed to be is some type of faker, they call them faker, whatever. I can't pronounce the name 100% right now. They come up and they have a kid, and apparently, they play this pipe, and a rope goes up into the air on its own. The kid supposedly climbs up in the air, and then he disappears. The guy who is the magician goes up after the kid. He cuts the kid in pieces. The pieces come down, hit the earth, whatever. And then he covers the body of the kid that had been cut up in pieces, and then he's whole again. And now that magic trick, in fact, this famous magicians, many famous magicians have gone to India in search of that magic trick to see if it's ever actually been performed. Well, there's a book out on that, and it actually shows how one guy who was another Barnum and Bailey type of guy, a Barnum guy that was able to create an illusion that never happened and spread the word enough that it became the most sought after or trick worldwide. It became a legend, let's just say one thing. And that is a lot of times how this UFO things also happen. You have a guy.
Well, let me interject here real quick, because I know our audience, that loves UFOs and cryptid stuff, but I'm just going to give them a teaser, because at the end of the episode, when we're wrapping things up, I have a case that I'm going to read to the audience that I studied about a cryptid that actually happened in Ohio, a sighting, and it's never been on the news. It's never been made public. So this will be an exclusive sighting just for our listeners to House of the Unusual podcast. So make sure everyone stays to the end, to the last 15 minutes, because it's
now you got me excited
very excited and very creepy.
You got me excited here, waiting for the last 15 minutes.
I'm telling you, it's creepy, man. It's a very creepy one, and I've got it up on my computer now, and it's ready to go. So our last 15 minutes, man, I'm gonna give the audience a special treat tonight, something that's never been heard, and they could take it for what it's worth. But you're talking about the trick and all that, but yeah, there's a lot of things that look like tricks, to us.
That could be. And, well, you know what, Joe? Let me tell you something. Let me really quickly say something here. There is one guy, which of course everybody knows, Stanton Friedman. He's the guy that actually brought back the Roswell, because the Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash history had forgotten it. And then in the early 80s, he went and met with Jesse Marcel, which was the intelligence officer that actually went to answer the Roswell, New Mexico incident. And supposedly Marcel, told them all this and that. And again, the Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash was reborn. And after that, the craze of UFOs has grown beyond numbers. More TV shows are dedicated to it. More scientific shows are dedicated to it. And then when you have, like in this book, like, for example, when you have an astronaut that actually walked on the moon, an American hero, come out and say, well, I think I saw a UFO like Edgar D. Mitchell did.
Right. Yeah.
It gives a lot of credits to that. And I got to tell you something. I think there was a VHS tape that was called UFOs Are Real or Flying Saucers Are Real. And Stanton Friedman in there, when he finished talking, I got to admit, though, I did sit back for a second and go, okay, maybe. It's like I respected the guy because you could see the guy knows exactly what he's
good doing. Right. It's good to keep an open mind. And I don't think there's a blanket statement or anything that could cover the whole UFO field to say that, yes, it's this thing. If you talk to a lot of people in some groups, they say, well, aliens are nothing but demons. Some groups say aliens are nothing but artificial intelligence. Every group has their own thing. I don't think a blanket statement's the way to go. I think it's a lot of different things and a lot of things we don't know about.
They say the aliens, demons and stuff, because basically the reason is because in the Bible it does mention that in the end days you'll see strange things in the sky. But here's one thing I'm going to bring to you. This is another kind of like one of those things that happened in my life. Okay, this was funny. And you know how it always happens, like in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, where every time Costello sees Dracula, Frankenstein, Abbott never sees them.
Oh, I love that movie. Yeah,
that's hilarious. And it also happened in that movie. I think it was Transylvania 5000, where the blonde guy always got to see the monsters, and the other guy who didn't. Well, this was kind of funny. We're going to Boston. My son is driving, and his best friend are in the front seat. And instead of the way I go to Boston all the time is I go up 684. I go across the Tappan Zee Bridge, take 684, and then I take 84 across. But this time, I don't know what happened. I think my son made a wrong turn, and he took the old road, which I think is, if I'm correct, the old 684. I could be wrong. I don't know exactly because I've only taken it twice. I know it's an old road that has, like 2 lanes in each side going and coming, and it looks older. You can tell that it's been around for a while. So I go to the back seat and I pass out. The moment I pass out, my son and his best friend start making noises where they wake me up, and they're claiming to have seen what looked like a pterodactyl flying across the highway. And
there's a lot of sightings of the Thunderbirds and all that, man. Yeah,
this is up going towards Boston, so apparently Massachusetts, has a lot of it. But anyway,
almost like the what was that creature from the movie The Giant Claw, where it looked like a large flying turkey or
I know. Oh my God,
or buzzard or something that kind of creature.
He said that it looked like a pterodactyl, and then at the tail it had like a hook, like a pitchfork at the end of the tail. As it was flying slowly across the highway. So now, of course, they're telling me the story, both of them, and now my son is 27 and his best friend is 27 also. I think they're both the same age, give or take. But this was about 2 years ago, so. They're telling me, and I'm like, yeah, sure. So now they're getting angry because I'm like, why didn't you take a picture? You both have cell phones. I said, well, everybody at the highway saw it. And then he came back, and apparently in the news, there was something about some people seeing a pterodactyl or whatever. So, of course, I come home and I make fun of them, and I laugh every time I bring up the topic. And they're like, you know what, Daddy? One day you're going to get abducted by aliens, and no one's going to believe you.
Yeah.
But
now let me put you on the spot real quick.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of abductions, if you got abducted by aliens and they brought you, into their little room or whatever, and they said, you know what, Eddie, we are an alien race. We are millions and hundreds of millions of years old. Before we take you back to Earth, you get to ask us one question. What would your question be?
Well, the first thing I got to tell you, I'll probably say, is this some type of joke? I'm kind of honestly.
They would say, nope, and that's your question.
Yeah, and you want to know what the funny thing is when you're saying what my question would be and everything is that, again, it's funny the way people look at me and portray me, because I am a very hard person to convince in a lot of those fields. But at the same time, I am also the biggest fanatic for that field. Like, there's not one single thing of flying saucer that comes out that I don't seem to buy, especially with robots and stuff. There's nothing that I don't like to create in my stuff. If you look at the history of all the stuff I've sold how to build your own flying saucer. One of my biggest ads was I told free flying saucer plans, which I mentioned in our first podcast. And I also did, what else? I also did actual UFO blueprints documented by the U.S. government. I've had many ads, many ads that I've ran because I love, and again, the reason this ties in so well into our genre, into our comic book novelty collections, is the fact that there were so many ads in the comics that dealt with outer space. One famous ad that I'm sure you know of was for the 48-inch inflatable alien from another world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
and
it's supposed to be like one of those doll-shaped balloons with the cardboard feet. I think there was a squeaker. That's the actual product. You know?
Are those even still around? Can you find those on eBay or anything like that?
It's, you know what? Finding one of those is like finding the Casper balloon, where some guy will ask for 150 when they do have one, which is like a 3 feet tall Casper balloon. Same one that was used for the 7-foot monster ghost. Same exact one. But
well, you know, when you get abducted, you could ask the aliens if they could find you one of those those giant alien balloons.
Well, I'll tell you what, those alien balloons. Somebody in a convention I was in a while back actually bought one of them, and he paid for one balloon $78, which I thought was hilarious.
Now, how many was it? Was there several balloons that came with it, or how was it set up?
There was two. There was an ad, just like they did the 7 gigantic dinosaurs for $298, which were 7 balloons with dinosaurs imprinted on it. And I mean, if you look at the actual thing, you can see inside Mail Order Mysteries where I display my collection of that. There was also an alien set. There were like 7 aliens for $298. And
could you imagine being a little kid and saying, "Man, I'm going to get these dinosaurs and I'm going to have cool little adventures," and then you get some balloons with, some markers on.
Well, I got to tell you, forget about a little kid. When my oldest daughter was born, and I was married, this is probably 1980. She was born in '86, so this is like 1989, 1990. They started running the ad for 7 gigantic dinosaurs for $298 again, and this was in the midst of all the coming back again from all the mail order stuff that was going on with Wrestling Magazine, wrestling being so popular at the time. The ad was there, and I fell for it. I actually thought, okay, this is the funniest thing. I went to a store in the mall. It was called the Starlog Superstore that they had in North Jersey. And I went to this, and believe it or not, Starlog's still in New York City. They still have that store on 14th Street. I think they have 2 locations. And it's been there for 60 years. Well, anyway, I saw in a couple of different stores in the mall. One of them, I think, was Sharper Image and stuff. They had this 2 feet tall inflatable dinosaurs that went for like $10 each. So when I saw the ad, I sent away for it, And when I got it, I said, "Holy cow, these people just ripped me off, man." But the difference is, I'm an adult now, and I fell for it. I didn't realize that the ad was as old as me. And the 7 set, the same aliens that were a 7 set that had the inflatable aliens, 7 aliens for whatever, $298. That's one of the aliens that the guy paid the $78 for, was for one of those balloons. Now, I do have 1 or 2 of those balloons. I don't have the entire set, but I do have 1 or 2. Now, there was another one, standalone ad, that had a 48-inch monster from another world, I think it says. Or I don't remember how exactly that, but it shows a monster, and he kind of has the moon monster face a little bit. If you look at the ad for the moon monster, you'll see that. And if you Google it right now, the 48-inch 48-inch monster from another world or whatever, you'll see the ad on the internet. That one I do have. That particular one, I got it. Gosh, I wish I knew where the heck it was so I can show it. It's in it's like my son says, when you go to my place, you get lost. It's like going to the Twilight Zones. You never come out, And he tells me also, anytime I put something away, it disappears. And I can tell you, man, right now, I have a prototype of something that I don't want to say exactly what it is, but it kind of pertains to what we're talking about, that I want to introduce, and I can't find it, man. I had it 6 months ago, and I put it where I could find it, and I I don't know. I spent almost 2 weeks looking for the darn thing. Can't find it.
You must have a little black hole or something in your collection where stuff gets sucked
And it never
into,
comes
and
out again.
it's in an alternate universe. Yeah.
Hey, listen. When I was growing up, when I bought the first robot plants, the ones from the Abracadabra Magic Shop, I had them, and boy, did I love that little envelope, the artwork, and everything. Well, I thought I had lost it. Time went by, disappeared. One day, I don't know, 20 years ago, I'm looking at some book I had, and lo and behold, out of the book falls the envelope, man. And this is the one that's pictured also in Mail Order Mysteries. This is funny that I say that. Mail Order Mysteries, I think, is out of print. If you go to Amazon right now, the cheapest one is like $52, and I'm like, what? So I mean,
Wow.
yeah, it was kind of like, you got to be kidding me that they sold out again. But the thing is, though, that envelope that you see in there for the robot plants, those are my original ones that I bought in the 70s when I was young. Again, the 70s had a very big influence in my life, growing up with space movies, growing up, that today, I got to be honest with you, I love the UFO lore. In fact, I think that I was looking at the other day, I have the Time Life books from UFO, and you know, if you know what I'm talking about, there was a few years ago, Time Life had this like 12 volume set of, you know, all the different UFOs and thing, and I have every single book. I have a special edition. You probably don't even know it exists.
No, I've never
No,
heard of
but
that.
there's also a special edition, not Time Life book, but I have a special edition, Roswell, New Mexico, that it has a VHS tape inside the book and a set. And it also has duplications of the original, like, newspaper and stuff like that. Now, here's a catch. I try to look for that original newspaper. It doesn't exist, man. And if there's a copy of the original newspaper, it'll go for $1 million. And I'm telling you, I spent almost 8 months looking for that. And I did this recently because I had this recent interest in flying saucers, which I still love the name flying saucers over UFO, because it kind of reminds me of the Jupiter, you know, the Jupiter 10, the Jupiter. Now look at this. I forgot the Lost in Space, the Jupiter, you know, the Jupiter, the oh my gosh, what?
I know what you're talking about.
I just forgot. I can't
I
believe a big collector like me, and I have a mental block on the Jupiter.
Our audience,
they know what we're talking about, because hey,
or they can look it up.
This is what's good about our podcast. It's transparent, and it's two people talking in a bar. You know what I'm saying? Or we'll have some friends. There's nothing that we're here trying to study before we do, or, you know, we just pick a subject and we randomly do it, and that's what it brings. It comes natural to us in our conversation, and that's what.
That's what, you know. I feel like, you know, our podcast audience out there is, you know, part of our family. They're kind of here with us right now, just sitting here, you know, listening to the conversation, and you know, they're either agreeing with it or disagreeing with it, and they could have their own conversations, and it's just a bunch of people just sitting around talking about stuff they enjoy.
Yeah, and I'm going to say one thing right now, that if somebody joined, it's supposed to automatically be done, but if anybody joined our forum at houseoftheunusual.com or the blog, and maybe they didn't get welcome because maybe me or Joe accidentally missed it, we welcome you, man. We welcome you, and we thank you for being a part of that, because the ultimate goal of House of the Unusual is not just for you guys to connect with us, it's for you guys to connect with each other, to grow a family. Right. It's not about selling products. It's about going there to grow as a family of, you know, same mind-liked individuals that like the same thing, that enjoy the same stuff, and that's what makes it fun. And then you can also interact with other people of the same idea, you know. I get
right. And if you want and if you're out there and you want just a strictly classic horror or sci-fi, you know, movies, TV shows, toys, whatever, jump on Facebook and, you know, head over to Crypt of Classics, you know, our Facebook group, and there's some cool people on there to chat with too. So there's two good, you know, forum sites that you could network with people and talk about the same interests, man, because that's what it's all about. And we don't, you know, nobody gets shamed for their interests. We're all the same family there, man. And so it's a fun time,
here's
man.
the thing.
But hey, we're getting on the 45-minute mark.
Yeah,
so.
we're getting there. So I'm dying for that, but I'm gonna put one last thing about Crypt of Classics here. I got in it the other night, and guess what I watched? I watched the movie that I have 10 copies of, The House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price. Man.
Oh, I love that movie.
Vincent Price has got to have the perfect mugshot for the man of mystery. Looks like a magician, looks like a hypnotist, looks like a man who creates a monster. I love this guy's facial features. And it's funny, growing up, I didn't see that until I was older and became a collector, that I said, man, this guy's a hell of an actor. And I love the girl that he has to place there with him as that. In fact, if you look at the earlier film, which is my other favorite, The Bat, Agnes Moorehead, which is the one that played the mother of Elizabeth Taylor, not Elizabeth Taylor, listen to that, Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched. She's the one that acted in the original The Bat, and she's very young there, which is kind of funny because I didn't really find her that attractive in Bewitched, but she was when she was younger. But I'm going to tell you something, though, honestly. The movie, The House on Haunted Hill, I'll say a quick thing right now because we're almost getting there, is about a year or two ago, some guy that appeared, I forget, some artist, he appeared in the Sci-Fi Channel. He did, I think he was only there for a couple of seconds, but this guy, man, he amassed a following of like 287,000 people on Twitter, right? Not Twitter, on Instagram. And he came out with a special edition that he drew of 400 posters of the House on Haunted Hill, where he's got Vincent Price sitting in a rocker. There's a skeleton behind him, and the skeleton is kind of holding a rope a woman is hanging above, and it's in black and white in color. And when I saw that, I'm like, damn, I gotta get that. I really have to get that. I want that poster, man. And it was 22 by 24, the original, whatever, signed by the artist. So here I am waiting in front of the Twitter. Not that he sent out a Twitter saying it's going to go on sale Wednesday, whatever. Man, I waited. I was so anxious to get it. And there I am in front of the computer. It's like, okay, it's Wednesday, 1:00. What the heck is it? And I'm clicking and it's telling me not available. I'm like, what? Then some guy tweets, oh my God, it's sold out in 5 minutes. Man, was I angry. Boy, was I angry. I couldn't get it. It's sold out. That's how bad people love old films. And Crypt of Classics is the place to go when you like that, because I watched it off one of the links that somebody linked in Crypt of Classic, had the entire House on Haunted Hill. I'm at work, 2:00 in the morning. Guess what? I watched it. And it's an awesome film. Awesome. It's an awesome film. And that's what I'm saying about people that, if you like old films, you like stuff like that, Crypt of Classics is definitely the fan book page to belong to. And if you want to talk about it, then you go to House of the Unusual and join the forum and discuss it. And
two good places to go, man. So there's no excuse out there.
Now we're running into that 50-minute. In fact, we cut you by 3 minutes. You got 12 minutes. Go ahead.
Oh,
now I'm anxious to hear what you got to say, Joe. You got to blow me away here, Joe.
All right. So everybody out there, if you need to press pause and catch your breath, grab a cup of coffee or, warm up under a blanket, for some warmth and security. Now's the time to do it now, because what I'm going to do is I have the case up here on my computer, and I always on my cases, I make a summary of what happened from when I talked to the witness. Now, I don't know if this case is true or not. It's up for the audience to decide if they want to believe it or not. But I'm going to give them the information, and they could come to their own conclusions, Joe, or they could do their own research on it.
You got me hot on the seat here. Tell me the story, Joe.
All right. So this sighting took place on January 3rd, 2018 at 6:03 p.m. Now I'm going to read it verbatim here on how I sent it in, how I developed the summary. All right. Field investigator Joe Pavlansky spoke to the witness on January 15th 2018, in regards to the sighting of January 3rd, 2018. The witness stated that while at the Raceway Motel in Toledo, Ohio, a human-like entity was observed on the south end of the building. The witness further stated that it was dark outside and that he could see what looked like someone kneeling down and looking at the ground. The witness then yelled, "Hey, what are you doing?" at the being, thinking it was a person. The being then stood up, looked at him, and expanded its wings. The being appeared to be approximately 6'3", very muscular, no hair, dark green skin, no clothes, an elongated face, 2 arms, 2 legs, and genitals that hung down to its knee, or a tail that hung down to its knee. After looking at the witness for a second, the being opened its mouth extremely big and made a loud squawking sound like an eagle, flapped its wings, and flew straight up. At this time, the witness observed a second being, approximately 100 feet in the air, with the same characteristics, flying directly above the lower being. The two then flew north out of sight. When the being on the ground flapped its wings to fly, the witness observed a feather fall to the ground. After the two were out of sight, the witness walked over to where it was and looked on the ground. The only thing he could see was a human-like footprint in the snow. The witness also retrieved the feather that fell to the ground, to which he advised he would mail to Field Investigator Pavlansky. Now, Field Investigator Pavlansky conducted up a follow-up interview on January 26, 2018 at 4 p.m. in regards to the feather retrieved by the witness as evidence. The witness advised that he had tried to call me but had accidentally erased my cell phone number. The witness stated that 2 days after our interview, which would have been January 17th, 2018, at approximately 1 p.m., 2 men came to his hotel room and knocked on the door. The witness stated that one was a white male wearing a Navy uniform and the other was a white male wearing a black suit, no hat. The Navy lieutenant told the witness that he understands that the witness saw a being and showed him a photo and that the witness had a feather from the being. The witness stated that he thought the men were from MUFON and handed the feather over to them. The witness then asked what the being was, and the lieutenant said, quote, "We'll worry about that," unquote. The two then left in a dark brown Ford Taurus.
Wow.
And that is what was sent to me.
So the next podcast would be the case of the missing feather.
I'm telling you, man, that one, I got goosebumps right now just reading that. I mean, it has, I mean, everyone out there could, you know, they could believe that. When I talked to this guy, it was, you know, he said he was free of drugs, free of alcohol, you know, no mental illnesses, that he was, you know, in sound mind. And he sounded very sincere about it. You know, it kind of sounds like he's seen something along the lines of Mothman type being, or could this have been something, you know, that came from another dimension? And what really scared me, and not really scared me, but kind of worried me was, you know, how did these two military or government personnel know that this guy had a feather? Were they, you know, did they have my cell phone, you know, tapped because I was with MUFON at the time and investigating these, you know, cases, so that when I made calls, they could listen up and see, you know, get the information that I'm receiving. Well, you know, it really kind of creepy.
There's 2 things you reminded me of. 3 things, actually, that resemble something what you're talking about. One is the Mothman. The other one is Jeepers Creeper, the film. And the third one is the film called the, oh, wow. Today my brain is really out of space, you know. You know, the Gargoyles. Remember the 1970s with the guy from Starsky and Hutch? That is what the 3 things you described right now that brought to my mind, which, again, you know, you got to see the whole thing. But it's an interesting story, Joe. And now here's the question: is it over, or do you have to go back to complete it?
You know what? I closed the case. There was nothing, nothing more from the guy. And I always told him, if anything else happened to he has my phone number, my email address to get in contact with me, which he never did. I did some follow-up, online in that area to see if anybody else witnessed anything like that. And there was nothing that I was able to find. I did for about a year after that. I would sporadically look, a few times a month. Nothing else was ever seen. So it's very strange. You hear a lot about, the government playing in, alternate dimensions and, parallel universes and all that. So could this have been something that, escaped and the military was tracking it? Or could this have been the Mothman? Or, could this guy have been hallucinating the whole thing, and just found a bird feather on the ground?
The thing is that, where the
killer
is, Joe? When you told me, I got all excited, like, wow, man, Joe's got the feather. Okay? You just killed me, man. You destroyed my whole excitement when you told me that.
I tell you what, I was every day after that, I was waiting at the mailbox for an envelope with this feather. I said, man, I got to see what this thing, looks like. And when I got a hold of him, and he told me that, and the guy sounded very sincere with it. And I questioned him over and over. I tried to, during this whole process, I tried to trip him up. I tried to, catch him lying or catch him telling me different details. And I couldn't. He kept telling me the same thing. He was sincere about it. He didn't seem to me that he was lying. Well, I always wondered they had to have been listening on my phone. It had to have showed up at some Homeland Security thing.
Joe, remember,
they sent it to the military.
You, being in law enforcement, would know that. And you would be able to tell when a person, because I'm sure you interview a lot of different people.
Yeah, I did not get any type of feeling that this guy was lying. And like I said, I did everything I could to trip him up, to catch him in a lie, to catch him giving me different details. And, even when I called him on the 26th, a week or so later, and I asked him about, I asked him again about the details from the original sighting, and he gave me the same thing.
Nothing different about it. Well, what, Joe?
Different.
We're only down to a minute and a half left. We need to close the show now, but I'm going to tell you, I think that we should look more into this, and we need to discuss a little bit more about this in coming shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got goosebumps now. I hope everybody else out there got goosebumps too and enjoyed it, man, because it's, like I said, they don't have to believe it, but I'm presenting the information, and they could do with it what they will, and it's a cool conversation about it. We could talk for hours
like you said,
about it.
Like you said, like I said, here's a guy who really is a hardcore to make a believer of. But you know what, though? I love the thing. I love the adventure. I love everything from Bigfoot to, in fact, when I had my magic shop, I'll say real quick, because we're a minute away, I think I mentioned this in the first podcast, I tried to create my own Bigfoot expedition in 1989 with my magic shop. And I actually wanted to get people and go on a Bigfoot hunt,
Oh, that
I
would
thought
be
it was
awesome.
fantastic, but I tell you what, the lack of money and lack of not credibility, of course, I'm saying, of people that would be credible to do this, I didn't have at the time,
Right.
And so it went to the wayside. But you know what? I love that. I love that stuff, man. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I still have probably every flying saucer plans I could ever buy from the 70s. I have about 4 or 5 actual plans that show you how to build a flying saucer. And I bought them from Popular Mechanics, Popular Science. I became friends one time with this guy who the company I think is still in business, called Information Unlimited. And Amazing One, I think, is the name of the company. And the guy did all the lasers and stuff like that and plans. And they're still online. You can find them under Amazing One.
Cool.
And
well, let me ask everybody out there that, because
we got 30
wrapping
seconds,
it up
Joe.
here, is that, listen listen to the podcast and then head over to the House of the Unusual Forum and give us your take on, the UFOs and what we talked about in this, about the case that I presented to you, and give us your, opinion on it, or if you have any information, and let's discuss
Okay,
it over
having
there.
said that, Joe, we got 20 seconds. I want to say it's been another beautiful, wonderful week speaking with you. And again, our show comes out every Wednesday at 3 p.m. every week. The new shows come out. Please tune in through Spotify, iTunes, whatever you use. Our podcast is on. So, Joe, good night then.
All right, Eddie, good night.